Okay. Stand by. Okay. Okay. Hi, everybody. I hope all is well. How's everybody doing? Can they hear me? I'm not. Let's see here. Stand by. I apologize for this. I'm trying to get some clean video here. Good evening, everybody. There's massive delay here. Error. YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain a smooth signal. Okay. Okay. Loud and clear. Okay. I apologize for the way I sound as well. There seems to be quite a bit of a delay here, but I'm going to just press on. This was sort of a bit of a botched opening, I'm afraid. I was supposed to go through OBS, and I had this whole opening and a countdown clock and music and my logo all set up and ready to go, and it didn't seem to be working. So there we go. Okay. It's good evening, Wayne. Good evening, Mrs. World of Wayne. I hope everybody is well. My voice is, you can hear my voice. So yesterday was a weird day. Things were going a little wonky. So we went to get tested and, of course, found out we're positive for COVID. So the trip to Florida had all kinds of gains, and it also had all kinds of, downs. Obviously, we got COVID. And but, we are vaccinated and boosted, and we live in a little bit of a bubble here anyway. So I'm not feeling terrible. I feel like I have a mild cold. But anyway, I didn't want to miss out, and I thought we would press on. So, thank you. Yeah, thank you. We're going to be doing. We'll be fine. Everything is fine. Everybody is vaccinated, so it should be good. But anyway, welcome to this live train wreck of a broadcast. I wanted to sort of test this out. I've got a lot to figure out, obviously. I tried to go through OBS, and I thought I was all hooked up and ready to go, but chat didn't pop up, and I don't know what's going on. So I'm going to have to go back, and after all this rehearsal and to try and get it all right. But anyway, I'm on the air, and I'm here, and it's great to be with everybody. Thank you, thank you, everybody. So anyway, let me dive in, and then we can sort of really get into a chat. So I'm going to try. I won't be watching the chat for a few minutes. The purpose of this is because I was going to build the SeaQuest DSV, a monogram kit, and I was going to build it and put it on the channel. And the reason why that was very important to me was because stand by. Is because 30 years ago I created that show, and I want to explain what I mean by that. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about it because it is fun looking at it 30 years earlier. As most of you may or may not know, I was in the television business for 38 years as a producer and as an executive. And for 5 of those years, guys, I apologize. I hope this isn't too bad. But for 5 of those years, I worked for Steven Spielberg. And it was during that time, 5.5 years, it was during that time that I created what became SeaQuest. I wanted to create, I should say, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, but unfortunately, I couldn't get the rights, so I decided to invent my own version of it. And for 18 months, I labored on a Bible with 2 very talented people, Jim Lima, who was my graphics designer. So all the graphics and the models, everything you see was designed by him, along with Richard Lewis, who was my production designer. And it was the 3 of us that ultimately put SeaQuest together, designed the world, created the characters, wrote it all up. Now, in television, it is the writer, who ultimately gets created by, if he's the sole writer on a pilot episode. And so that's what happened. Rockne O'Bannon got the created by credit. But everything he wrote was lifted from the Bible, except for the underlying story, which ultimately was drastically changed because 3 months prior to production, Rockne resigned. Now, what's curious is I've gone back and I've done all this Google research and done all this stuff, and it turns out that there was a lot written about the show and a lot of negatives, and those negatives were absolutely deserved. It's fascinating. I took some notes because I thought it was worth it. Because I wanted to sort of remember this, not in a bitter way, but I wanted to remember it in a positive way. And so, it was one of those things where, you sort of look at these things. And I looked at Wikipedia, and I thought that was very interesting. Wikipedia says that there were disputes between the producers. Well, there were no disputes. Basically, after Rockne resigned, I didn't have a writer. And so the 2 writers under him became they finished the pilot episode, and they were left to write the show. But the studio, unfortunately, was not happy with that, and so ultimately they wanted to start putting their own writers on here. And here comes Mrs. sprueVerse with more fluids, but that's not going to help.
Your voice.
I know, this is a train wreck, but that's what they should be, right? Train wreck Fridays. Wayne, you own train wreck Tuesday. I own train wreck Friday. What a great way to open. But anyway, and so, you know, I wanted to talk just very briefly about what that meant. There were no arguments. There just weren't any producers to physically run the show. Here's the problem. The problem is it came out of my head. And I wasn't the writer. I didn't write the episode. And I didn't ultimately, you know, become the executive producer of that show. I worked for Spielberg, but I ran his television department. And so you can see how the studio wanted their own executive producer. And in those days, in television, studio executives did not get executive producing credit. They do now. They didn't then. And so, you know, it's very difficult for any writer to come along and write a show that ultimately is out of someone else's head. And so what do? They want to make it their own, as well they should. And so all the various different writers that came on the show were people who tried to write a show, but it wasn't their show. They didn't embrace it. And you can see that becomes a train wreck. The graphics were very young, CGI in those days. It, you know, ultimately, it was very green. You know, we didn't understand CGI back then. We were one of the very first shows to create CGI. And in fact, Amblin Imaging, I'm very proud to say, produced the first full CGI enterprise, believe it or not. And we even had the great John Eaves working for us. And he's a lovely, very talented guy and very well known in the Star Trek circuit now. So it was a fun world. It was definitely something that I enjoyed putting together. Dr. Ballard, who became my friend, was the inspiration for it and responsible for a lot of the storytelling and the mechanics of why we did what we did. And if my voice wasn't about to die, I would have had a much richer and deeper conversation with you about it. But what I'm going to do is I want to show you this model. And look at this. This is the SeaQuest. And it's a very it's a very crude model. I don't want to be rude. It's 10 parts, and it has no decals. And you know, it's about 20 inches long, and it's just basically 10 parts. And so you can see why I didn't want to ultimately you know, devote an entire show to it, because I don't think it was worth it. But here it is, and I want to talk a little bit about it because it's sort of fun. So what I did was I put the whole thing together. I gave it a coat of Duplo primer, and it's got this really cool surface on it. Let me show you this surface. It's got this wonderful surface that Monogram put on the kit. And what happens is when you ultimately you know, build this kit, the box art, I've got an extra one here. The box art here, well, let me put it on B because you can probably see it here. The box art here shows its incredible skin in great detail. And but when people go to paint the boat or build the boat, they're using an airbrush and they're making these big squiggly lines on it, and that wasn't accurate. So if you're going to build this model and you want to build this model, I think it's fun to have in your collection because it's nostalgic 90s television. But ultimately, what you're going to do is give it a gray coat, Then you're going to give it a dark sea gray blue coat, and then you're going to give it a white coat of a light white gray. And then with a very soft 220 sponge, you just drag it over the surface, and it will reveal your darker paint. I made it in a lighter color because accurately the boat would have looked like this. It was the fact there was a lack of light in deep water that we filmed it as a much blacker ship, but it was actually a much lighter ship originally, unless it was intended to be. So here it is. It's still available. It's one of 4 kits Monogram put out about the show. They did the SeaQuest DSV, which stands for Deep Submergence Vehicle. And they also did a transporter. Here's the transporter. Here it is. And I'll put this on B camera for you. Here it is. Here's the transporter. Now, believe it or not, this kit is actually a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And I'm actually going to build it on the channel, I think, and light it and put it in a diorama because I think it's worth it. So there was the transporter, then there was the Stinger, which was supposed to be SeaQuest. It was supposed to be a sort of a vehicle used by the sub to get around in the ocean. Called a Stinger, I suppose, because it was supposed to look like the tail of a stingray. And then, of course, there was Darwin. In Darwin, the Dolphin was, you know, an incredible $250,000 Dolphin. It was a mechanical Dolphin built by the same team that built the whale for Free Willy. They did an incredible job. And in fact, for the first 3 episodes, we had Peter complaining about how we kept a live dolphin in tunnels, in tanks, and under poor conditions at Universal Studios, when in fact it was just a mechanical dolphin. So it was a very important part of the show, and it was a great part of the show. It lasted 3 seasons. The first season, everybody says, was in some ways the dullest, in some ways the best. But tragically, it was way ahead of its time. But I have no regrets. And I wanted to build this up because I promised I would. So anyway, there it is, the SeaQuest. It'll go on the shelf with the rest of the collection. So I'm gonna dive into chat now because I'm losing my voice. This train wreck broadcast. But anyway, it's great to have everybody with me this afternoon. I really appreciate it. So let me see if I can dive in and answer some questions. Yeah. Hi, John. Jeff Fink, how are you, man? Thank you for coming along. Yeah, I need honey and lemon for the voice. Mrs. sprueVerse has brought me fluids. And I've got honey and lemon. So you can see it's actually getting a little better. It was a little dry. Yeah, White Glove Models, it was a mechanical dolphin. And the thing about it was that at first it was incredible. I mean, it really, it behaved beautifully. It had great tail motion. It had great physical motion. It was just a really amazing creation. Very expensive to build, very expensive to maintain. But you can imagine the technology, how far it had come since Jaws, when, you know, Darwin was not tethered to anything. He was a free-standing remote control vehicle. And he could have gone in the ocean. We tried him in the ocean a couple of times, and seawater does mess with everything. So we did keep him in fresh water ultimately. he either lived in lakes where we made it, we shot it for ocean, or he lived on 9 sound stages at Universal Studios in LA for season 1, and then season 2, the show was moved to Florida. What was Roy Scheider like to work with? Roy was a consummate professional, but he was also very concerned about doing a television show. He was a motion picture star, and funnily enough, when we asked him to play Bridger, he turned us down at first, but ultimately said yes. We made a deal with him. He came to the studio, and in those days, the studio was still run by Lou Wasserman and Sid Sheinberg. And Sid Sheinberg was the sole reason why Steven Spielberg was a director. He believed in him as a young man, and he owed his career to him, and they were very close, and they were very loyal to each other. But when Sid Sheinberg found out we were making SeaQuest, he called us to his office to complain, because he wanted Roy and his wife, Lorraine Gary, who played Roy's wife in the movie Jaws, to come together for Jaws, the television series, which Steven wanted nothing to do with. So, but Roy was a gentleman. He had his issues, because sometimes the professionalism on television series wasn't to the degree it was on movies, and he got frustrated. But for the most part, he was a consummate professional. Steve 131. No, I did not want to move the show to Florida. The problem was it was super political. SeaQuest was on 9 stages at Universal, and there was a lot of pressure to release those stages for other television shows and other movies. And at the time, Universal Florida had nothing. There was no reason to go there as a destination. So there was a lot of politics and pressure to do it. And in some ways, it made sense. And interestingly enough, when we actually first started scouting locations for the pilot, we thought about actually making the show in Florida. But we ultimately determined that we just didn't have enough technical prowess there at the time. Now remember, this is 30 years ago, so you didn't have the talent for producing CGI, you didn't have the effects departments, and you certainly didn't have the crew. And we didn't understand enough about CGI. We didn't understand enough about how to make a show as big as this and be that far away when we hadn't figured it out. And so ultimately we decided not to. I mean, for me, ultimately, it made it impossible for me to be as close to the show as I wanted to. But at that point, the show had been taken over by other writers and producers, and it became this sort of SeaQuest 32, whatever they decided to do with it. And they gutted it. And that's why the show was canceled, because it wasn't being produced by people who really cared. And I don't say that to be negative and to be angry. I say it because that's the truth. These shows have to be created by people who have the passion to make them and produce them. And ultimately, if it's not out of your head as a writer, it's never going to work on the page, and certainly not on the screen. Lou, I apologize. So I opened the first link I opened was through OBS. I didn't open it correctly through YouTube Studio. I made a mistake. So I'm grateful you're here, and I so profusely apologize for the gross incompetence. But I'm going to work it out, and this won't happen again, I promise you. Mike King loves the shirt. Excuse me. Yeah, I like the shirt too. This is Yay Monsters. You can get the shirt on Yay Monsters. That's where we got the model for the show. 2,000 Leagues Under the SeaQuest, Jaws, Deadliest Catch. You have a fascination with the sea. Wayne, I do. I do have a fascination with the sea. I always have done. And you know, the thing of it is one of the things that I've never forgotten was spending some incredible time with Dr. Ballard. And you know, when you consider the fact that 2/3 of our planet are covered in water, and less than 10% of that has ever been explored, and we know more about our own solar system than we do about the oceans we live in. And that to me is extraordinary, and I think that there is so much opportunity for us to tell stories about the deep. But they have to be on a scale where you believe that people can live there and work there. I think Jim Cameron did an incredible job with The Abyss. I wasn't crazy about the third act, but I thought the world was a great world. I just think there's so many others. You know, Arthur C. Clarke wrote an incredible book that I had optioned called Deep Space. I couldn't get it set up. And it was about farming in the future and about living under the ocean. So this theme has been around for a long time. I'll let it slide this time. Yeah, thanks, Lou. I appreciate it. Yeah, gross incompetence. David Coates, we are doing the boat with World of Wayne. If you go back, I've posted I think six updates, and Wayne's posted several as well. And we've finished the boat, so we're in the process. I know he's filmed his final reveal. I'm in the process of finishing mine up. We were supposed to be all done, but you know, the lovely COVID came along and blew all that up. But we're fine, and it'll be done. I'm promising that it'll be in Wayne's hands no later than Monday, and for our next Thursday live on World of Wayne. So that's don't forget, everybody. If you're not scheduled to be there for that, because you'll want to be. White Glove Models, I have not seen that James Cameron documentary, but I did see his Challenger dive when he went to challenge depth, 36,600 feet, extraordinary. And he is, you know, he's an incredible talent, incredible explorer, incredible just at everything he does. He's so super talented. But I'm definitely going to check that out. David Giles asks what the process of making a whole new language for the show was. Process for making a new language for the show. or was it another show? Yeah, language, I don't recall making a new language. Now, we did do that for Earth 2, which was another show I was responsible for. That didn't work. That was also for NBC. Nobody talks about it. Thank God nobody talks about it. I've tried that theme a couple of times. I wrote a pilot, actually, I wrote a pilot for UPN called Tranquility, which was Gunsmoke in space. It never went to series. That was a long time ago now. Yeah, Jeff, the box art is certainly acceptable for painting your boat, but I didn't design it that way. You know, color and light change everything. I was having this conversation with Lou the other day about color and paint and light, and how the eye perceives it. When you when you look at something in person and when you see something on a television screen, you know, what's the difference? And how do you visualize that and interpret that? And, you know, as artists and model makers, the truth is you can you can do whatever you want. And I think that's the excitement about the hobby. But one of the things I do keep sort of reverting back to is the way my mind sees things, you know, in person. Whether it's the TARDIS, the color of the TARDIS from Doctor Who, or the sub itself. But it's certainly acceptable to paint it like the box art. Richard Slezak, I hope I'm pronouncing your name. I apologize if I'm not. He's asking me about my shows. SeaQuest, yes. Doctor Who, yes. Deadliest Catch, yes. On the scripted side, I worked on the original series of Twin Peaks, MacGyver. I worked on 30-something, Young Writers, when I was at ABC. I obviously did SeaQuest and Earth 2. I did Class of 61, which was a Civil War period piece for Steven Spielberg. I worked on some animated series for him. We worked on some children's things as well. We did Harry and the Hendersons and Fudge. I did Mission to Mars when I was at Paramount for ABC. I've also, I was responsible for Storage Wars, Ice Road Truckers. These were my shows. And I'm not difficult to Google or IMDb. Sub-Zero asked me if I did any cameos in my shows. That is a great question. I actually did. So if you're a Twin Peaks fan, anytime you go to the Great Northern Hotel and you're in the restaurant or in the bar, I'm the piano player. I think my biggest scene was in episode 18 of the original first series. I think it's 18. Check it out. You'll see I'm sitting behind the bar and I'm playing the piano. Not the bar, the piano, playing the piano. Runs to the box set. Hi Ian, how are you, man? It's great to see you. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. Okay, SciTac wants to know how much of Storage Wars was scripted. Hang on. It wasn't scripted. I, I have to be very careful because the show is still on the air. It's, in fact, I think its 300th episode is still running on A&E, and I don't want to say anything, but I can say this: is when I was responsible for the show. Sorry about banging the mic. When I was responsible for the show, what you saw is what you got. Sometimes it took 4 or 5 lockers, 4 or 5 different storage facilities, and it would be hundreds of hours of TV to make one show. Very hard to make that show. And we were often accused of things. We sent people to, we set up definitely people to come and appraise things for us. And there were accusations that we were putting things in lockers. But I can tell you, to my knowledge, on my watch, that was not done. But it certainly appeared that way. And we did have some situations where, and I don't really want to get into it, that did happen. But it didn't ultimately affect the outcome of a show. But I promise you that show was not scripted. Yeah, Ian, I know we've got too many live streams. That's what I was worried about, because the only live stream worth tuning into is Thursday at 8. World of Wayne, and and of course all the other wonderful programming that Wayne does. But I was very concerned. I didn't want to upstage anybody. That's not my intention. My only intention on doing this is to be a part of this incredible community that I love so much. I genuinely do. I love building models. I love sharing stories. I love the connection to television and film. I love science fiction. I love fantasy. And to be able to share it and be a part of it in this community, to me, is a gift. It's an absolute gift, and I'm so grateful to be a part of it. But I realized that if I don't dive in and do it, then what's the point? So you got to start somewhere. But I'm going to try and do this a couple of times a month, and if we'll sort of build on that, and definitely Fridays feels like a good place to be. But I definitely will not be streaming at all on nights that Wayne is streaming. Yeah, Dave Hester was a character, Ian. He was he was one in a lifetime. He really was. He was what you saw is what you got. He was he was angry at the world. He was so mean, and we never really got into his psyche. There was a lot of personal reasons why he was who he was, but what a great character. No, Ian, I don't know if you missed it. I have COVID. I picked up COVID in Florida when I went to see my son. Mrs. sprueVerse and I, we went to Florida last Thursday, and we were there till Monday. And then we got home on Tuesday and started not feeling so well and got tested. And sure enough, we tested positive for COVID. So, but we're vaccinated and boosted, and everybody, it's sort of like a cold, really. I really apologize for the voice, and you're also kind of hanging there with me. Lou, trust Lou to be honest, funny, and to the point. And what can I say? You're correct on all levels. And the truth is, we actually knew that there was a very high probability that we could catch COVID. But I don't know what to tell you. I hadn't seen my son in a year, and I missed him terribly. And I wanted to go see him. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. It's fine. It actually just feels like a small cold. This voice thing happened this morning. I've been fine up until now, but I appreciate it. Nathaniel Katzman. Hi, Nathaniel. Thank you. Yes, I appreciate that. It was a good show. Sub-Zero. I don't. I have that TARDIS, it's a miracle that I have that TARDIS because it was built by believe it or not, a young model maker in Vancouver. It's an extraordinary model. It stands about three feet tall and about 2 feet wide. It's beautiful. It's all hand built, and it was built for the main title sequence. They didn't use CGI. They used a model and motion control. We filmed it in a good old-fashioned studio with 35 mil. And after it was done, it went to the studio. It went back to Universal. And I get a call from the studio literally saying, if there's anything you want, come and get it because it's all going to the trash tomorrow. And I went over to the studio, and there it was, in a giant locker. So I grabbed it. From SeaQuest, I did have the only maquette ever built of the model was half the model. It never existed in its whole form. And I also had a stun gun and a personal audio link. Both of the stun gun and the personal audio link, we lifted quite heavily from Space 1999. But those things, I gave them to Jim Lima, who designed them, because I thought that he deserved to have them. Over the years, it's been really hard to hang on to things. A lot of things I auctioned off for charity, but for some reason, that TARDIS I just can't ever let go of. Lou's asking, how do you know when to stop working on a thing? Are you referring to models? Or are you referring to a television show? I don't know what you're referring to, Lou. If you're referring to models, you don't. If you're referring to a television show, budget and time. So Lou's asking about when you're producing a show, things go unfinished because you run out of time. How do you handle that? Well, this is one of the challenges of everything. But the secret to a good television series, especially science fiction or period, is prep. Prep. That's the super secret to it all. And you fight a studio like crazy to have enough time to get things done, because they get a certain amount of money from the cable operators or from the networks or wherever they're getting their money from, and they want to make it. It's a business for them. They want to make a profit. They don't want to put it all on the screen. Gone are the days where you put it all on the screen and you got it back in distribution. Now they want out as quickly as they can, but you have to be really careful that you can tell the story and you have all the elements you need to make that story. And you've got to make sure that you've got enough people around you who understand that and are prepared to sort of back into a calendar. But things do get left unfinished. And you either shoot a piece of it or you shoot it in a way where they can't see the rest of it. And that's been going on for years and years and years. You never wanted to look around the other side of the Spindrift, for instance, in Land of the Giants. And you certainly never wanted to turn the camera on some of the other, great models that we've seen, including the great Enterprise that I don't believe had windows on one side. Read upstream. Read upstream. Okay. Read upstream, Lou. Okay. I don't know what that is, but I'll figure it out. Wayne wants to know, how do you still get ideas that you think will make great TV? Well, Mrs. Walter Wayne, I think it's my curiosity about the world around me. I had a sort of a formula for years, that I kind of lived by, which was ordinary people who do extraordinary things, high risk, high reward. And those elements have always fascinated me. But I don't know, it's just really, I'm constantly amazed. Just when you think you've seen everything and you think you're able to figure everything out, you find something amazing. And so I'm constantly amazed at what you can find. But it's harder and harder, I must admit. And sadly, there's a lot of young writers today who don't have a lot of life experience. And so a lot of the movies today feel more like video games to me. But, that's typical of somebody who comes from a different era. Every genre, every era is different. If you grew up in the 60s and 70s like I did, anything, I was a big passionate fan of Jules Verne. I wasn't a fan of Isaac Asimov, so that kind of science fiction didn't interest me. More fantasy did. But, I don't know. It's a curiosity of the world. Oh, any hints about the next model? I'm collaborating with Wayne. I apologize, guys. One sec. Well, that's better. I can't tell you. I can't tell you what we are thinking about something, but we're supersizing it, and so I don't want to spoil it. But we've got something big and fun in the plans. And we should know more in the next couple of weeks, and I'm sure we'll be sharing that with you. I'm not sure how, but we'll definitely be sharing it with you. Is deadly. John, is it Haig or Hay? Forgive me, I apologize. Is deadly as catch. Did you ever go out on one of the boats? I did. I did go out on the boats many times. I get terribly seasick, and it was not fun, but it was always an adventure. We had so many awful things happen on that show. You'd go out on these boats, and you'd be in 30-foot seas, 40-foot seas, and boats would be sinking around you, and you'd hear maydays. It was chilling. But when we started the show, it was literally a derby. You had a fishing schedule, a calendar of when you could go out and fish for crab. All these boats would show up, a horn would ring, blow, and off you went. And whether it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever the schedule was, you were allowed to catch as much fish as you can. Those were the heydays. And then the quota system came. And it became very difficult because depending on your seniority and the politics, you were given a certain amount of quota. And so it became impossible for a lot of the small fishermen to fish. So they leased their quota to the bigger boats. the net result of that is the fleet shrunk. And so, when I first started making the show, I think there were maybe 250 boats in the fleet going out. And today, most of them are rusting in harbors in Seattle and other places. And I don't think there's more than a handful of boats that are actually fishing anymore. It's quite sad. Roe Cooks is building a battleship Bismarck, and they should remake that. That was a horrific story. It doesn't matter what side you were on. That was a tremendous loss of life and an incredible story. What a boat. There were so many wonderful people, brave people in World War II, incredible stories. I had a neighbor years ago who, sadly, he passed away, and he was never recognized for being on a boat called the Ronin, and it was part of a mission to sort of sneak past the German. The Germans, they controlled the Gibraltar Straits, and there was a secret mission to send a flotilla through there to see how penetrable the Gibraltar Straits were. And off went this flotilla. Most of the men were decimated. Thousands went into the water and died. He was able to save someone who was, he remembers talking about it. He was covered in oil, burning, lost a limb. It was horrific. And managed to pull him up on a cargo net at the side of a ship and single-handedly pulled him up onto a rescue boat and survived, and was never recognized for it. And we, as neighbors, started sort of reaching out to the military. And sadly, one of the things that's still true to this day is if a mission is not declassified, which this mission wasn't, therefore it didn't exist. And if it didn't exist, it didn't happen. And if it didn't happen, there's nothing to award anyone. That's got to change. Yeah, Lou, I said net results. He's too much. You're fishing for puns there, Lou. Wayne's in on it. Yeah. I don't mind the jokes as long as they have a hook. Okay, the fishing puns are flying now. I don't mind the fishing puns. It'll be fun. But you got to make sure you scale them up. Otherwise, they're just flat. What's your next slide? All right. I've lost control of this broadcast. They're entertained. Everybody's entertaining themselves in chat. I wish I could put some of these up on the screen. I got to figure that out. I got to figure out OBS. I obviously opened 2 streams. I don't know how you do that. I can't wait to see what that looks like when I go back and check. Sub-Zero, did I ever direct an episode of any of my shows? I did. I worked on shows like Mutant X, which was for Tribune. I also worked on Beastmaster and the very there was also Earth Final Conflict And there was also Andromeda starring Kevin Sorbo, which was from an old Gene Roddenberry script. And I worked with Major Roddenberry on that show. And we ran for like 4 or 5 years. And I directed several episodes of those shows. One in particular, check out, it starred William Catt from Greatest American Hero. And that's probably a good example of my work to check out. The logo in the corner, Lou, it's a watermark. When you post, when you go, Wayne can do it better, explain it better than I can. But when you go to YouTube Studio, you start, uploading your shows, I think it's in Studio, in YouTube Studio, in your what do you call it? Your preferences. You can say watermark your show, and they'll take your logo. Or in your case, you only have I think you have your face as your logo. So you may want to change that to Aztec Dummy instead of your face. And if you do that and you ask for a permanent watermark, it'll put it on all your shows. Here you got Wayne's explaining it now. You see, it's in branding on your YouTube Studio channel. See, don't listen to me. Go to the professional. But that's how we do it. Lo, no, I'm not. Honestly, not holding out. It's just that, at what point are you just, I don't know, I'm here as part of the community because I just enjoy everybody, and I'm genuinely in love with the art, it's especially your craft, and the fun we have as a community. That's why I'm here. My professional career, I'm very proud of it, but I don't talk about it a lot. Dashboard, everybody. Yeah, Wayne will send you. Wayne will take care of you. Although, speaking of that, Wayne, OBS, man, I don't know what I did. I must have opened up 2 streams today. Anyway, I've got to go back and figure it out because I had it all set up perfectly. I mean, literally, I had a countdown clock. I had a show starting soon, a banner. I had my main title. I had music put up. I had everything ready to go, and I couldn't see chat. So then I decided to open up the YouTube stream to see if I was streaming, and I think I must have opened up a second stream. So Lou's asking about Andromeda. So let me tell you. When I arrived at Tribune Studios to head up production, Andromeda was already in production. It had been in production about a year, a little less than a year. I replaced somebody they had fired, the studio had fired, and hired me to retool everything, and I was responsible for almost $600 million worth of production. But with Andromeda, there were certain things that just didn't ring true to me. I hated the color of the set. It was the character that had the tail, the young actress who had the tail. That could have been cool if it had been done properly, but instead they literally just took a stuffed piece of I don't know what and the poor girl had it attached to her costume, and it just dangled behind her, and it looked ridiculous. So, there was not a lot of attention to detail, and there was not a lot of passion and care for how things should look. So I was responsible for the retooling. In fact, I brought in Richard Lewis, and we completely redesigned the set, and tried to upgrade things and improve things the best we could. That's never easy. But I think we did a pretty good job. Steve 131's asking about Red Dwarf. I love Red Dwarf. I thought it was a great show. Putting aside all the difficulty you have with the expense of making a show like that, I dug the characters and I loved the storylines. I thought it was great. Ed Hughes, are you still working on the Spitfire? Ed, I am. Let me show you what I've got here. This is as far as I've got. This is it. This is as far as I've gone on the fuselage. And I'll show you on the. This is what it looks like. This is as much as I've done. And I've completed the wings. And I've completed the wings. They're massive. I mean, I've got the wings over there. I'm not going to go get them, but I kid you not. Without exaggeration, the wingspan is probably 6 feet, 5 feet, 5 feet. It's ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous model. I mean, I started this thing. I've skinned the entire wings. They've got their aluminum skin on, and it looks beautiful. I'm going to paint it, I think, to look like an original Spitfire. Where it goes, I have no idea. I have a feeling I might end up taking it to Oregon and hanging it somewhere. I don't know where. But originally I thought when I was watching World of Wade and he was building the Spitfire that I was ordering that kit and I was going to build it as a Partworks kit. And what showed up was, a pickup truck full of balsa wood. I go, what have I done? But then I thought, hey, I'll start building it. And it's not that I gave up, but it's very time consuming and it takes a tremendous amount of space. And I've dedicated the left side of my studio here to all this production equipment to film a show. And the reason why I did that is because I'm not great at editing. And my son now is too busy to, he's helping me the best he can. And Mrs. sprueVerse is awesome. But I've learned live to tape. So my shows, I can actually shoot a show and it's pretty much cut. And I just have to sort of join it together, but I'm still learning all that technology. Ian Longley is asking, out of all the shows and movies, what are my favorites? I would obviously say my primary, the show, the thing I was most proud of, I would have to say, was probably Doctor Who, the movie. Because of the 7 years it took me to get those rights and get that made. Unfortunately, I was just ahead of my time, and the ratings that we got on that show, they would kill for today. The kinds of ratings we got and were not picked up with, you don't get today. They just don't. You don't get. You don't get a 9 share, 11 million households. You just don't. So it was basically, in today's, it would have been a mega hit today, but sadly back then, it wasn't enough. for them to want to keep going. I think had they have really understood the value of it, we could have at least got a year out of it. We were close, but no cigar. And of course, Twin Peaks I was very proud of when I was at ABC. You know, it was a show. We produced the pilot. In those days, it was screened by the network brass, who was so upset and angry about it, they buried it. And it was put on in the summer with no promotion. And it did ridiculous numbers. I mean, ridiculous numbers. People found that show in droves and thought, what is this doing on ABC? And I think it's a shining example of what happens when you really take a risk. They didn't understand risk taking, and they don't today. They say they take risks, but they're not. They're risk averse because there's no time to develop, and people don't want to take the risk of losing their jobs. And that's just the truth. But those are probably a couple of the things I'm the most proud of. Oh, thanks, John. I appreciate that. I think it's going to be a great it's going to be a great model, that Spitfire, and I will finish it. Ed, I will. I promise you. I'll make an effort to actually start building more of it and releasing an update as a show. I'll do that this year. I promise you. All right. Thanks, Mike. Good night. Yeah, we've been on for an hour, so it's time to say thank you to everybody. Guys, I can't thank everybody enough for joining me today. I apologize for the voice. I apologize for the technical glitch, but we're gonna get that all sorted out. Thank you so much for hanging with me. And I really appreciate everybody. And everybody stay well, be safe, build something, and let's get together very soon, okay? Take care, everybody.